What's up, Falcons Nation? It's your boy Jew, coming at you guys with a quick live show. I actually want to get some things off my chest. I know a lot of you guys are used to me doing my shows on Wednesday nights for What's the Word Dirty Bird, which we will be doing What's the Word Dirty Bird tomorrow at 8. But I just wanted to get up here really quick and do a quick live show because I had a couple things on my chest due to the Matt Ryan trade that took place on yesterday. So we all know that Matt Ryan was traded yesterday for a third round pick in the 2022 NFL draft. He was traded to the Indianapolis Colts, but I'm a firm believer and as a fan holding the Atlanta Falcons organization or holding organizations accountable for their actions. I know a lot of people a couple years ago when Julio Jones basically forced his way out of Atlanta, went on undisputed and basically stated that he was out of there or leaving Atlanta and he wanted to be traded and move on to another organization. We all held him accountable for his actions. We all pretty much turned on Julio Jones for wanting to be out. But I feel like we'll be hypocritical or be hypocrites to not talk about the Matt Ryan situation in similar fashion, the way that we talked about the Julio Jones situation. I feel like as fans, sometimes we side with the organization because we're fans of the team, we're fans of the logo, and I always will be an Atlanta Falcons fan. I am a fan of the logo, but when my team does something wrong, and in this instance with this Matt Ryan situation, I don't mind him moving on. It's over now. I don't mind the team deciding to move on from Matt Ryan, but I don't believe that the Atlanta Falcons organization did it in the right way. So I definitely wanted to jump up here really quick and give my thoughts on the whole Matt Ryan situation. I feel like for Matt Ryan to arguably be the greatest Atlanta Falcons player of all time, we definitely didn't give him the right send off. If you look at players like the Ben Roethlisbergers, you look at the Eli Mannings, those guys got to end their career on their own terms. Those were franchise guys that led their teams to Super Bowls, guys that were great quarterbacks or great players in their organizations. And I feel like the Falcons did Matt Ryan a disservice in the way that we went about trading him. I don't, like I said, really care that the organization decided to move on because we all know that all good things at some point must come to an end. And we knew that Matt Ryan wasn't going to play forever. But in the same breath, I feel like the Falcons could have went about it in a better manner than which we did. Arthur Blank, I think he's a great owner. I've talked about it numerous times that I believe he's one of the best owners in the NFL. Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith, both of those guys as first-time head coaches, head coach and GM. The jury is still out on these guys to see if they're going to be a good GM and if they're going to be a good head coach because both of them are doing this for the first time. We know that Terry Fontenot is a GM for the first time, and we know that Arthur Smith is a first-time head coach. So for those guys, we kind of have to give those guys the benefit of the doubt. But Arthur Blank and Rich McKay, I hold those guys in high regard. And being that I hold those guys in high regard, I feel like in this situation, with me being a content creator and with us being fans of the team, we have to hold them accountable for this debacle of Matt Ryan being traded in the way that it went down. I don't care that he was, as I mentioned before, that he was traded and that they wanted to move on from him. The problem that I have with him being traded is the way that this trade went down, the way that Matt Ryan was treated in this situation. Basically, he was kind of placed on the back burner when they went all in on this Deshaun Watson trade, which didn't eventually end up happening. And I pretty much knew the writing was on the wall at that point when we didn't get Deshaun Watson that Matt Ryan was somehow, some way not going to play for the Falcons again. But I feel like if we knew the last game of the season last year against the Saints was going to be Matt Ryan's last game of his career as a Falcon, I feel like they could have sent him off in the correct manner. So as fans, I think we have to be a lot better about holding these organizations accountable. One thing that I do love about social media in today's age is that everybody has a voice. Even the players now nowadays have a voice, where back in the day it was kind of whatever was in the newspaper, whatever the media portrayed these players as. We kind of went with that narrative. But now that players have their own voice on social media, they have their own following, they can basically, peel back the curtains and let us kind of see how these organizations treat these players. And in this instance, I think that the Falcons did a poor job of the way they went about trading Matt Ryan. I think they should have been upfront after last season if they wanted to move on. If they felt like Matt Ryan was getting up in age and they felt like they wanted to move on, that's all they had to say. And they should have made that public when Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith did their press conference a couple months ago after the season was over. I feel like Rich McKay, Arthur Blank, somebody should have spoke out on the Matt Ryan situation of, we would love to have Matt Ryan here, but we think at this time it's best that we move on and get younger and try to retool or rebuild this team. If they would have went about it that way, I think that it would have been a lot less toxic. The way that it went down was done in a very toxic manner. From my standpoint, I feel like the last couple weeks on Twitter and just in the media in general, Falcons did a poor job. And I do appreciate each and every one of you guys. I know I'm kind of ranting. I appreciate you guys joining me. I see Pat Norris in the building. He said, "What's good?" King Kale, what's going on, man? ATM, the receipt man's in the building. What's going on, bro? Yasuke Knight, he says, "I'm going to have so much fun watching the Falcons fans put their foot in their mouths during this rebuild." Okay, what's going on, man? Ghost Peppers, what's good? And I know I kind of surprised you guys and just did an impromptu live, but I don't get many chances where I can do this. But I kind of wanted to just jump on because I had some things on my chest that I wanted to get off my chest about this whole Matt Ryan ordeal and also the Falcons moving forward. Because at this point, we have to move forward. But I did think that we did him a disservice, and I kind of wanted to talk about it. Melvin, what's going on, man? Millie Mills, what's going on, bro? Mad Mike says few quarterbacks in things on their own terms. Montana, Brady, Manning. Yeah. It's not a lot of quarterbacks that end on their own terms. But I think with Matt Ryan, they should have allowed him to end it in his own terms, or at least, like I said, been more upfront about how they felt about him. Wallace, what's going on, man? And myself, I don't think they knew Calvin Ridley's situation sent them over the top. I don't think there was a choice. I completely agree with you. I completely agree. Yeah, that whole Calvin Ridley situation kind of threw everybody for a loop. Let's see. Eric McDowell, what's going on, man? And like I said, I appreciate all of you guys joining me. Definitely hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and definitely share this out because I know a lot of people that possibly follow me, they may be at work or they may not realize that I'm live because I rarely do impromptu lives. But also in the chat, let me know if you guys enjoy me doing impromptu lives because I can do a lot more of these impromptu lives. I'm off on Tuesdays. So if you guys enjoy, impromptu lives, maybe sometimes on Tuesdays, I'll go live during the day or, while I'm off. But I definitely wanted to talk about this situation. But just in that same breath of me talking about Matt Ryan in general, if you look at the way that Bobby Wagner for the Seattle Seahawks was recently released by the Seattle Seahawks after Russell Wilson was traded, he basically stated, Bobby Wagner, that the Seahawks didn't even reach out to him. They didn't ask him to restructure his contract. They basically just got rid of him, which we all know Bobby Wagner has been known to be arguably the best linebacker in the game for the last decade. He's been, out of his 10 years in the league, a 7-time all-pro player, like a 6 or 7-time Pro Bowler. So it just goes to show you that a lot of these organizations in general, they only care about themselves. They don't put the play first. So I feel like as fans, we have to do a better job of holding our teams accountable. We hold players accountable when they force their way out, when they want to be traded, or we hold players accountable when they want to be paid. But I feel like we don't do a good job as fans of holding our owners, our GMs, our front offices accountable for when they drop the ball and when they handle these situations in the wrong manner. And like I was stating with Matt Ryan, I just feel like this situation could have been handled in a better way. Like I said, at this point, what's done is done. We have to enter this new era and move forward. I wish Matt Ryan nothing but the best. But at the same time, like I said, I think as the fan base to do better about holding Arthur Blank and Rich McKay and these guys more accountable. I still feel like even that Matt Ryan has been traded, Arthur Blank or somebody in the front office should come out and address the situation. If you guys seen on Twitter, I think they put like a 30-second video together for Matt Ryan, thanking him, for all he did for the Falcons. I did see Arthur Blank issued a statement about Matt Ryan and all he did for the city and all he did for the franchise. But personally, I think that they need to do an actual press conference where questions can be asked. I don't feel like they should be able to just hide behind a statement. Well, I'm gonna just make this statement and put it out, right statement and put it out. I feel like because Matt Ryan is arguably the best Atlanta Falcons player or the greatest Atlanta Falcons player of all time, something should have been said. Something should have been done in the front office. They should have spoke to the media. They should have came out and stated, and maybe they will. Maybe I'm just jumping the gun, but I think that they need to come out and address the fans and address Matt Ryan and address the whole situation of why they did what they did, what direction is this team headed in. Right now, I feel like as a fan, we really don't know where this team is going, what this team is doing. They've said one thing, but now it feels like they're kind of doing another thing. We heard Terry Fontenot state we want us, still be competitive, but we want to have our cake and eat it too, and kind of build a team. And I have no problem with that because I've always stated one player isn't bigger than the organization. So before Matt Ryan was a Atlanta Falcon, I was an Atlanta Falcons fan long before Matt Ryan ever put on the Falcons jersey. So I definitely understand them wanting to move on, but I feel like as a Falcons organization, we have a bad history of not treating our legends right. And this goes back to Chuck Smith. This goes back to the players that we've had on, that we've talked to and interviewed, guys like Chris Draft. I mean, it's been numerous guys we've talked to. Jamal Anderson, Mr. Dirty Bird himself, basically put out a statement on Twitter, and he talked about when the team moved on from Jesse Tuggle. They basically told Jesse Tuggle, you either can retire or you can play for another team, but they weren't going to re-sign him. So they basically kind of forced Jesse Tuggle into retirement. We've seen a similar thing with Roddy White as well. When Roddy White was here in 2015, I believe, the year right before we went to the Super Bowl, him and Kyle Shanahan were kind of butting heads over his role with the team. And Roddy White ended up retiring, kind of being forced into retirement. I believe Roddy White still had something left in the tank, but because of him butting heads with the head coach, or excuse me, with the offensive coordinator and Kyle Shanahan, they kind of just either told Roddy White he could either try to find another team to play for or he could retire, and he decided to do the same thing that Jesse Tuggle did in retiring. So I just feel like as an Atlanta Falcons organization, we have to be better in these situations. I know Arthur Blank. I don't believe Arthur Blank at the time that Jesse Tuggle was forced into retirement. I don't believe he was the owner of the team yet. But in the Roddy White situation, Arthur Blank at that time was the owner of the Falcons. So we just have to be better as an organization. Players have to believe that they can trust the front office. If the players don't feel like they can trust the organization, players are not going to sign with the team because, believe it or not, players do talk. And trust me, Julio Jones, wanting out, who knows if Julio Jones had discussions with a Roddy White and, decided maybe he wanted to leave because him and Roddy White are really close. And maybe Roddy White told him, and this is just me, speaking from my personal, I don't have any inside information, but who knows if Roddy White and Julio had that conversation? Who knows if Matt Ryan had a conversation with former players and decided maybe it's time for me to move on, because the reports are that Matt Ryan decided that he didn't ask for a contract extension. He just decided that it was time to move on from Atlanta in general. And personally, I just feel like he felt like it was time to go because the trust had been broken. So we just have to be better as Atlanta Falcons organization of being upfront, being truthful when it comes to speaking to our, our players, especially the legendary type players. Like to me, the Julio Joneses, the Julio Jones of the world, the Matt Ryans of the world, the Jamal Andersons of the world, the Jesse Tuggles of the world. Those guys, Falcons legends, the Chuck Smiths of the world. You can't address every single player the same way, but your legends, you have to make sure you treat your legends right and that they're sent out in the right way, even if it's being via a trade, even if it's via retirement. You want to do right by those type of players. And I just feel like in this situation, Arthur Blank, Rich McKay in the front office, Terry Fontenot, all of those guys dropped the ball. But I put most of the onus on Arthur Blank as the owner, and I put most of the onus on Rich McKay at this point, because at this point, Terry Fontenot was just the first time GM. I can't put it on him. And then I don't even think Arthur Smith really had a say in this. I'm sure they probably talked and had some type of meeting before they went after Deshaun Watson, but I really doubt Arthur Smith controls anything when it results in the roster. I doubt Arthur Smith has that type of power where he could have kept Matt Ryan here, even if Arthur Blank and even if the guys up front, the Rich McKays of the world, was ready to move on. But with that being said, I do want to jump in and kind of get you guys thoughts on this whole Matt Ryan ordeal. What do you guys think about the Falcons moving forward? What do you think the Falcons will do moving forward? As we know, we have seen that Marcus Mariota was recently signed, and he's going to actually he's signed a 2-year deal, but it's really like a 1-year deal with a player option for the second year. Personally, I like Marcus Mariota as a quarterback, and I think that he'll be a bridge quarterback. And I talked about this a little bit in my video yesterday, that I really don't think Marcus Mariota is brought in to be the franchise guy or is being brought in to replace Matt Ryan. Now, I do believe that Marcus Mariota does have the talent, the God-given ability to possibly be a franchise quarterback. The biggest problem with Marcus Mariota is he's been a guy who couldn't stay healthy, because he's a mobile quarterback and he runs outside the pocket a lot. And he didn't know how to slot when he was with Tennessee. He was kind of like a Michael Vick in the way of he didn't understand that how to protect himself, how to run out of bounds, how to slide. And he took a lot of unnecessary hits, and he took a lot of unnecessary contact. So I definitely think with him playing behind this offensive line that we currently have here, hopefully because he knows Arthur Smith's scheme, hopefully it'll be more of a run heavy scheme with us bringing in Damon Williams, who we brought in from the Kansas City Chiefs, and last year he played with the Chicago Bears. We kind of have a 3-headed monster in the backfield with Davis, Mike Davis. CP just re-signed with us, and then we have Williams that we brought in. So hopefully we can have some type of 3-headed rushing attack. But I really think this whole Marcus Mariota thing is just, he's a bridge quarterback. I don't know at this point if the Falcons are looking at drafting a quarterback like a Malik Willis or a Kenny Pickett. I know they were at Kenny Pickett's pro day, and I believe today Malik Willis has his pro day. So I'm sure some type of Falcons representatives will be there, or scouts will be there watching these guys during their pro days. But like I said, I just feel like at some point, we just need to know what direction this team is headed in. Personally, I think at this point you're kind of rebuilding, because Matt Ryan is, you let Matt Ryan go. Now you really only have Grady Jarrett and Deion Jones on the defensive side of the ball, but on the offensive side of the ball, you really have no identity on the offensive side of the ball at this point. I do believe eventually this will be a run-heavy team, especially now when you're bringing in Marcus Mariota, because Arthur Smith did coach in Tennessee with Marcus Mariota and with Ryan Tannehill, which were mobile quarterbacks, and he likes to run that RPO type scheme where you bootleg the quarterback out, a lot of play action pass and heavy run scheme. So we're definitely going to see. It's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens. But I do want to see jump in the chat a little bit, because I do see that you guys have put some comments here. Wallace says, yes, I was heated to see Matt leave like this, but I understand why Matt still wanted to move on. I completely agree. I mean, I definitely understood. Like I knew the writing was on the wall when they went all in on the Deshaun Watson thing. I knew that the writing was on the wall, whether we got Deshaun Watson or not. That's when I knew Matt Ryan's days as Atlanta Falcons was over. Terry Fano also said it is disrespectful to say that we're not going to be a good football team or we're in a rebuild mode. Exactly, and that's what I basically stated. Now, in Terry Fontenot's defense, he didn't know that Calvin Ridley was going to get in trouble and Calvin Ridley was going to miss the whole season. He didn't know prior to saying that Julio Jones wanted out. I don't believe. So if you look at the Falcons prior to him making that statement, we pretty much had a formidable team because he was thinking possibly that you would have Julio, you would have Kyle Pitts, you would have Calvin Ridley, Hayden Hurst in that offense, and then Matt Ryan. That offense would have been deadly. So in his defense, the team kind of fell apart to be completely honest. So I kind of feel like this Matt Ryan thing kind of just naturally happened. Like Julio eventually forced his way out in the trade. Calvin Ridley sat out and then got in trouble. So in the defense of the front office, some of this stuff they didn't have any control over. But at the same time, I feel like now that the situation has changed, I think that they owe us an explanation and they owe the Falcons fans an explanation. The Nation says Mr. Blank Terry and Coach Smith definitely seen a rebuild in their future. I'm glad it's over with. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad the whole Matt Ryan situation is over with. I'm tired of arguing with fans. And if you guys follow me on Twitter, I rarely respond to anybody on Twitter. I may retweet if I see something that I like, but I put a comment on Twitter about Matt Ryan. Why is age a problem? Everybody's about his age if he's still playing well. And it was a whole bunch of comments. And personally, I don't take any comments personally. That was just personally something that was on my mind. Most of the time when I'm on Twitter, I'm just putting stuff that's currently on my mind. I rarely go back and forth with anybody on Twitter. But with that being said, like I said, it was time to move on from Matt Ryan. And I definitely think at this point we're in a rebuild. Believe it or not, we're in a rebuild. ATM says, Jew, I'm just mad at the fact that we only got one pick. We could have gotten a second round and a handful of picks for Matt. Grady might want out since him and Matt said last offseason that they don't want to rebuild. And yeah, and I agree. And this is a great statement by ATM. That's the homie right there. I definitely agree, ATM. Like the whole situation now, because it looks like a rebuild, I could definitely see Grady Jarrett being a player that doesn't re-sign with the Falcons. I could definitely see a Deion Jones, those guys wanting to move on because who wants to sit here and waste years of their career? Grady is in his prime. Deion Jones is in his prime. Those guys may want to move on. Now, I'm not stating that the Falcons can't win with Marcus Mariota, can't win with the current situation that we have, but it's not likely. Like, it's not likely that you're going to make a deep playoff run. It's not likely that you're going to play in the Super Bowl this season without Matt Ryan being here. I feel like Matt Ryan would have given this team the best chance to compete for a Super Bowl. So at this point, I mean, who knows? We'll see what happens. I definitely have to wait and see as far as the draft first to kind of see what happens before I can make a judgment. But I personally think at this point, you're in a rebuild. Whether Grady and Deion Jones stays or not, you have so many holes that you have to fix. The trenches you have to fix. You have to bring in more weapons because you barely have anything at wide receiver. So it's so many holes, gaping holes on this team that at this point you're in a rebuild. So I mean, like I said, maybe we can have our cake and eat it too, as Terry Fontenot stated, because our division isn't really that tough. I mean, you do have the Saints and you do have the Panthers, who are teams that are currently looking for quarterbacks as well. The Saints brought back Jameis Winston, but we know what he is. He's just an average quarterback at best. The Panthers, they're scrambling at this point. They've kind of been in the cellar of the division the last couple of years. ever since they got rid of Cam Newton. And then now the Buccaneers are like the cream of the crop. I mean, they got Russell Gage from our team. Today they recently signed Leonard Fournette back, and they're trying to put the band back together there with Tom Brady. And I really think Tom Brady coming back also has something to do with, he looked at the division and just stated like, it looks like the division right now is up for grabs. So with the Bucks coming back right now, they're definitely looking like the team to beat. Will we be able to compete with them? We'll be able to, we'll have to wait and see. But right now, it looks like the Bucks. It looks like the Bucks division, the win at this point. And Eric McDowell says we need to build through the trenches, and I completely agree. I mean, the trenches is the biggest thing. That's what I would do in this draft. I would go and get a Kevon Thibodeau. I would go in and get a Jordan Davis with that 8th pick. If neither one of those guys are there, which one of those guys should be there, then you possibly go with the best player available. If the top edge rusher that you want isn't there, I wouldn't just randomly take any edge rusher, especially now that David Ajabo got injured. He probably will slide a little bit in the draft with him tearing his Achilles. So with that being said, I definitely think that the Falcons definitely should start in the trenches, both on the offensive line and the defensive line. The defensive line has the most gaping holes right now. But if both of those edge rushers, like if the Aiden Hutchinsons and the Kayvon Thibodeaus are going by the time you get to 8, and Jordan Davis somehow is going, or somehow they don't believe in Jordan Davis, they think that that's too high to take Jordan Davis, then maybe you take an offensive lineman right there. I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but if you think it's a Quentin Nelson in this draft and you can solidify the offensive line, because really all we're missing is that dominant guard in Jalen Mayfield's spot. If you can find a guy that's a blue chip type player and you think that he's going to be a world changer, one of those generational type offensive line, maybe you just take an offensive lineman, and then later on in the draft, because we have another, being that with Matt Ryan, we got another 3rd round pick. Maybe you just, go with that. Maybe you go with one of the offensive linemen, and then you just build through the draft later in the draft with the edge rushers. Let's see. Blizzard Wolfgang, he says it will be freaking sweet to see some Falcons fans wear a Matt Ryan Colts jersey to the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Yeah, I don't know. That might happen, but I don't think there's too many. From what I can see, it's not so. I do think that Matt Ryan has fans, but I think a lot of people were ready for Matt Ryan to go. I think a lot of people felt like Matt Ryan kind of overstayed his welcome. You do have the diehard fans like you guys that are here on the show. You guys who support the heavy hitters, support Jew Talk Sports, support Mad Mike, K Styles, and all of the Atlanta Falcons content creators. We do have, some of the fans that are real fans and that got behind Matt Ryan and got behind the city. Personally, I'm going to get behind whoever the quarterback is. So at this point, it's in Marcus Mariota we trust at this point. Like, I'm down for it. Now that Matt Ryan is gone, it's time to move on. Make you fumble, what's going on? He says, now y'all see why most true fans push for Fields, would have had a quarterback already. I disagree. Fields, we really don't know what Justin Fields is. And to be honest, I don't believe you need you need to bring in a quarterback. We need to build this team first. That's personally what I believe. If I'm the Falcons, I'm not selecting a quarterback in this draft with that top pick. If you want to get a guy like we got last year, like a Felipe Franks, a guy who's a project, have at it. But personally, I don't think Justin Fields would have made a difference on this roster, because this roster still has a whole bunch of gaping holes. Like, we're no better than the Chicago Bears right now. We have no weapons other than Kyle Pitts. You have no wide receivers. And last year, we really had a running game that was non-existent. Other than Cordell Patterson, I believe we're in the bottom of the leagues in rushing. So when you have poor O-line play and then you can't run the ball, like, what are we talking about? What are we talking about? So even if with a Justin Fields, we see Justin Fields couldn't do nothing with Chicago. So I don't really think that Justin Fields would have made a difference. I understand why fans wanted Justin Fields because of his connection to Georgia. But I really don't think that Justin Fields would have made a big difference. I mean, in this year's draft, if you want a Justin Fields type player, you'll just draft Malik Willis. and it's pretty much those type of players in each and every draft. I mean, Malik Willis is a guy that I like a lot, and I definitely think he could be a guy. If the Falcons want to take a quarterback, he would be the quarterback that I would take. I would take him over Kenny Pickett. To me, Malik Willis is the number one quarterback on my draft board, especially to fit Arthur Smith's scheme with the mobile quarterback, a guy that has a big arm. The only thing I don't like about Malik Willis is he's not the biggest guy. He's like Russell Wilson. He's only like 6 foot or 6'1". I like my quarterback to be at least 6'3", 6'4", so they can see over the offensive line and so they can survey the field. Sometimes with the smaller quarterbacks, it's hard for them to read defenses, and it's hard for them to see over, those 6'5" and 6'4" offensive linemen. So if anything, that's the only knock I see on a guy like Malik Willis, is he just doesn't have much size. But even if you wait until next year and you wait for the quarterback from Alabama to come out, he's similar to a Malik Willis. He's not tall either, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's only like 6 feet as well. The kid that plays for Alabama, I can't think of his name at the moment, but yeah, I don't think he's that tall either. Weezy B says, I'm happy for Matt. He deserves to win. I live in Indy, so I'm glad I'll get to see him more. Shouts out to Weezy B out there in Indiana. Like I said, man, I think Matt Ryan's going to play really well. Of course, I'm going to continue to follow, Matt Ryan's career, follow his career there in Indianapolis, and see if he's able to, get that Super Bowl, see if he can push that young team that they have there and get those guys over the hump. But at the end of the day, we're Falcons fans. So like I said, at this point, Matt Ryan, because he's no longer wearing red and black, he's now the enemy. And I believe next season we play the Colts, if I'm not mistaken. We don't play them this year coming up, but I believe we play them in 2023. So, I wish Matt Ryan the best, but at this point, he's the enemy. But yeah, it's shouts out to Matt Ryan, shouts out to We to Be. I'm definitely going to also be checking out Matt Ryan when I can, checking out the Colts to see how well he plays for them. Man, Mike says Matt Ryan time was done when Calvin Ridley got in trouble. They lost the first round from Philly. There was a deal in place, so Calvin Ridley is to blame. I completely agree with this statement as well. Calvin Ridley, we know what Calvin Ridley is. Calvin Ridley is a really good receiver, very talented player, definitely can be a number one receiver. He just has to get his head on straight. But I definitely think once the whole Calvin Ridley thing went down, it definitely made Arthur Blank, made the front office start to think a little differently about this team, whether can we win now or whether is it time to rebuild. So I really think with Calvin Ridley getting in trouble, that did make it a little bit easier for them to go ahead and try to go all in on a Deshaun Watson, because Deshaun Watson is like 10 years younger than Matt Ryan. I think Deshaun Watson is on like 26 to 27. Matt Ryan is getting ready to be 37 or something like that. So in this instance, I definitely think that both Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley, both of those guys kind of missing the season last year, Julio being traded, and then Calvin Ridley pretty much missing the whole season. They saw last year that they really didn't have any weapons around Matt Ryan. So it's like, what are you doing with a Matt Ryan? Are you wasting the last couple years of his career when you don't have enough talent around him, both on the offense and the defensive side of things? BCJ, what's going on? He says this team should have been torn apart long overdue. I know a lot of people said after the Super Bowl or after 2017 we should have blew the team up, and you may be right. I mean, Bill Belichick is one of those coaches that he moves off of players years before their prime is over, but sometimes that can come back to blow up in your face, like we've seen with Tom Brady. Bill Belichick, most of the time he's been right when he's moved on from players like the Lord Malloys, like the Richard Seymour. When those guys were kind of getting up in age, he decides to move on and bring in younger talent and develop the young talent. So, I mean, I feel like you kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. I kind of think that works both ways. Sometimes it works out when you get rid of an old player. Sometimes it doesn't work. He went to the Denver Broncos, and the Colts decided to go with Andrew Luck, and it ended up blowing up in their face because Peyton Manning was able to get the Broncos to 2 Super Bowls and win one. So I mean, that can go either way, but I completely agree with you. At this point, we're blowing it up and we're trying to start over. So we hitting the reset button. Wallace Smith says, I agree with you, Jew, that Mariota is going to be a bridge stop to help the quarterback that we draft. Yeah, that's what I think he's going to be. It's going to be a similar situation to what happened with him and Ryan Tannehill. I think they'll bring in a quarterback. I don't know if it'll be in this year. If they like one of these guys, like a Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett, then they may take one of those guys and then allow Marcus Mariota to kind of be the guy that's going to pass the torch. But I'm not sleeping on Marcus Mariota either. Marcus Mariota is very talented. I believe he won a Heisman Trophy, or he was a Heisman Trophy finalist when he was in Oregon, and he played really well for the Tennessee Titans before Ryan Tannehill took his job. His biggest problem was he couldn't stay healthy because he ran a lot and he took a lot of hits, a lot of punishment. Everyone says, I don't think they wanted to do it since it happened. It made sense to end it. Yeah, I completely agree. I don't think that they wanted to move on from Matt Ryan either. I think it was just more of a, like I said, once they kind of pinned themselves in that corner with the Deshaun Watson thing, the writing was on the wall at that point. Make You Fumble says, y'all really thought Matt would stay forever. His contract was killing us. I and this is another statement I can't really agree with. His contract is still killing us, believe it or not, because we took the largest cap hit in NFL history. So for us to have 40 million in a cap hit, due to Matt Ryan's contract, whether he was an Atlanta Falcon or whether he was traded, and this is something that we tried to drive home. Me, Mike, K Styles, we tried to drive this home on a heavy hitter shows that we still are taking that cap hit. So basically, what the Falcons is doing is we're paying people not to play for us. So all of those people that are happy that Matt Ryan is going, I'm happy for you guys. But at the end of the day, it didn't do anything to benefit the Falcons. Like, you're still taking a $40 million cap hit to allow Matt Ryan to go play for the Colts and possibly get the Colts to a deep playoff run when it could be you. So at the end of the day, it's not, you basically paying somebody to leave the job. So I don't know many businesses that want to pay somebody that's not at work, unless you got PTO or something like that. If you get fired, a lot of the times they're not going to pay you $40 million to leave. And that's basically what we're doing with Matt Ryan. We paid Matt Ryan $40 million not to play for us. So I don't think that we won in that situation. I think Matt Ryan in this instance is winning, or he ends up winning because he ends up going to a contender and he got his money anyway. So, I mean, it is what it is. The Mad Monk ATL, what's going on? He said, at this point, you should just do a full fire sale of whatever assets you have left and acquire picks. If I'm the Falcons, I'm not dropping every single player. Personally, I wouldn't get rid of Grady. I wouldn't get rid of Deion Jones unless that's the direction that this team wants to go in. But one thing I will say is, if you do a fire sale, like Terry Fontenot and Arthur Blank in the front office decides that they want to do a complete fire sale, we're going to get rid of every single player that was here when Dan Quinn was here, and we're going to try to rebuild our team all the way. If you do that, I'll say this: you better be right when you get rid of good players. And what I mean by that is, the guys you draft, you better hit in the draft. If you miss in the draft, this is going to be a short regime for Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith. If they decide to get rid of every single good player on this team, the centerpieces of this team, and decide to move on, you better hit on the draft. And it's hard to hit in the draft. Like, Grady Jarrett was, I think, a 5th round pick, and he happened just to turn out to be an all-pro player. That rarely happens. So if I'm the Falcons, I'm not in the business of getting rid of good players. That was the reason I didn't want Matt Ryan to leave. Like, we didn't get better by letting go of Matt Ryan. We won't get better if we get rid of Grady Jarrett and Debo. Now, if you decide to do that, like I said, that's completely up to the organization. I wouldn't be mad at it if they did it, because that'll be the organization's decision. But I don't think it would be a wise decision. I mean, I'm in the business of having as many great players on your team as possible. And that's why I stated when we had Foye, even though we couldn't pay him, if we could find the money to pay him, I would have paid him, because it's rare to find great talent like in the draft, like the hit on the draft and every single pick The draft is a crapshoot, so you don't know. You're basically like playing the lottery. You don't know. You can look at a player's tape and everything, but doesn't mean that those guys that were great college players are going to be great NFL players. It's been a lot of guys that were great college players, but it didn't translate to the NFL. So if I'm the Falcons, I'm not getting rid of Grady and Debo unless they tell you that they're not. Like if Grady says I'm not re-signing with you guys, or if Debo, those guys say that they want out, then at that point you have no choice. But I'm not willingly giving up my best assets just for picks, because picks, we've seen the organizations like the Cleveland Browns have first round draft picks for years and years and years and years, and they've been in that quarterback carousel for years because they don't know how to develop talent and they don't know how to evaluate talent. Like I said, that's hard to do. Being a scout, is a hard job, to be able to identify talent and then to be able to place them in a system where they're going to succeed. That's not something that's really easy to do. Mr. ATL Sean says we did the right thing by keeping Patterson. I agree, but I really still don't know where we're headed. I do think we did a good job in keeping Patterson because, like you don't just get rid of good players. And Patterson's a good player. He fits the scheme perfectly. Now, I don't know if Cordell Patterson knew that Matt Ryan was headed out the door. So I'm kind of glad that we kind of got his deal done before it was all said and done as far as Matt Ryan being traded. But Cordell Patterson is a really good player. He fits the scheme perfectly, and we're not paying him a ton of money to play for us. So we went in every area when it comes to a Cordell Patterson. And Mark says we haven't won anything since 2017. We've been rebuilding since then. I wouldn't say we've been rebuilding since 2017. I just think that we didn't keep the core pieces that we needed to continuously win. Like we got rid of those players that were doing the dirty work. We got worse in the trenches every single year. In 2016, we went to the Super Bowl. A lot of people forget Andy Levitre in 2017 got injured, and then Chris Chester, who was the other guard, a veteran guard that we had in 2016, retired. So the offensive line kind of went into shambles after the 2016 season. Like that offensive line started to get worse and worse and worse because guys moved on. Alex Mack eventually ended up moving on to the 49ers. So I really don't think that we've been rebuilding since 2017. I just think that we haven't drafted well because we haven't drafted the trenches, and the defensive line and offensive line got worse after 2016. If you remember, we had pretty much every single player that was on that 2016 team, as far as the edge rushers, were gone, other than Vic Beasley and Tat McKinley, which Tat McKinley wasn't a part of that 2016 team. So you lost Dwight Freeney. You lost Jonathan Babineau, who retired. You lost Rasheed Hageman, the defensive tackle. You lost Courtney Upshaw. You lost Brooks Reed. So pretty much that whole defensive line from 2016 was pretty much gone after 2017. All of those guys were gone. Adrian Claiborne, all of those guys were gone. So, and BCJ says, who would you rather trade if you had to choose between Debo and Grady, generational talents? So if I'm the Falcons, I'm keeping both of those guys. I don't even want to answer that question because I think both guys need to stay. I think Debo is a generational linebacker because he can cover and he can stop the run. He's good at getting tackles for loss, and he's good at rushing the passer as well when he comes on blitzes. And then Grady Jarrett is just a generational type talent for his size. He's the closest thing to Aaron Donald in the NFL. He's not Aaron Donald because I think Aaron Donald is a step above Grady Jarrett, but Grady Jarrett is right there. Other than Aaron Donald, Grady Jarrett is a similar player to Aaron Donald, a poor man's Aaron Donald. Let's see. And Weezy B says, please don't ruin Kyle Pitts' tenure here. Please bring in talent around him. And I think that they're going to build around him. Don't be surprised that they take a Drake London, a Kenny, not Kenny Pickett, but the kid from Georgia, George Pickens. Don't be surprised if you see those guys drafted. Like they're gonna have to draft a wide receiver because we weren't able to sign any wide receivers yet in free agency. So don't be surprised if you see two wide receivers drafted this year. One early and then maybe one later in the draft. And King Kale says the Bucks keep bringing players back. It's what's going to hurt them. I don't think that that's going to necessarily hurt the Bucks. I think the Bucks are doing the right thing. They're trying to capitalize on Tom Brady's last years of his career, and Tom Brady is the ultimate recruiter. He's bringing in guys. He's even trying to recruit Julio Jones to win the championship. So Tom Brady is the LeBron James of the NFL. At this point in his career, he's trying to stack as many rings and trophies as he can in his trophy case. And I think it's wise what he's doing. He's such a good recruiter that he was able to get Russell Gage to go over there to the enemy and play for the Buccaneers. That and the money, but he did a good job of recruiting. So I think the Bucks are going to be the team to beat in the NFC South and probably the team to beat in the NFC. Now that Green Bay lost Devontae Adams, it's really not any team standing in the Buccaneers' way right now. Like if you look at it, I can't name a team in the NFC other than the Rams, the division, the defending champs that beat the Buccaneers in the playoffs. They're pretty much the only team that can match them talent for talent. Other than the Rams, it's not really any other teams on the NFC side to me that can, go talent for talent with the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are one of the most talented teams in the NFC or in the league, but in the NFC definitely. Everybody's went to the AFC at this point. Let's see. I agree with Millie Mills. He says I still want Jordan Davis at 8. I do too. And if we got Jordan Davis, I would feel a lot better about if we did move on from Grady Jarrett, or if Grady Jarrett decided that he wanted to go play for a contender and that he didn't want to re-sign with Atlanta. You better have you a Jordan Davis on your roster because he's going to be that guy in the middle that's going to solidify the defense. So if I'm the Falcons, I'm definitely taking Jordan Davis, knowing that Grady Jarrett's contract is almost up and he may decide that he doesn't want to play with the Falcons anymore. And I will be getting off here in a few moments, but I do want to get to a couple more of your comments. And Isaac says, Jew, I agree with the trench help. You're going to need a defense to wreak havoc on these quarterbacks. Fandom has been spotted at Georgia games and Pro Day. I feel like we are going to get some players from Georgia. I agree. I think we definitely are going to take. Hopefully, we can get multiple players from Georgia because I like their defensive talent. They have a lot of talent there in Georgia. Pretty much all of those guys in their front seven, the Kobe Dean, Travon Walker, Jordan Davis, all of those guys, Wyatt, all those guys on that defense of Georgia is really, really good. So if we came away with any of those guys from Georgia in that front seven, I wouldn't be disappointed because I think Georgia definitely had the best defense in college football last year. And to me, they have some of the best talent, especially in their front seven. That defensive line was one of the best, if not the best, in college football last year. And what's going on, Dre? He says, what up, everybody? How everybody doing and feeling on this Tuesday morning? I'm feeling good, man. Like I said, I just had to get this something quick off my chest. I see 51 people in the actual chat. So if you guys can hit that like button for your boy, I appreciate you guys. It helps the algorithm. So if you guys could hit that like button for your boy, I really appreciate that. And I appreciate y'all tuning in. I know I normally don't get on here in the morning or in the middle of the day, but Tuesday's my off day. So I decided that I wanted to jump on really quick and get some things off my chest and talk Matt Ryan, talk Atlanta Falcons, and, give you guys a quick show this morning. Let's see. And the Mad Monk ATL says this city was always loyal to Vic. As much as I hate to say it, but I think we all know it is back in the back of our heads, this is the urban hip hop city. Matt Ryan never got a fair shake. I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, we should care about is winning. But I know that Atlanta and Georgia is a very strong, black city. Atlanta is a very strong black city. A lot of one of the biggest African American fan bases in America. So I completely understand. I mean, I became a Falcons fan because of Michael Vick, so I can't really judge anybody for their fandom of Michael Vick. Michael Vick was an electrifying player, a very good player, and grew up in the same area that I grew up in Virginia. So, shouts out to Michael Vick, and Michael Vick was must see TV. So, I definitely love when Michael Vick was here, but I think Matt Ryan has surpassed Michael Vick to me when it comes to being the greatest Atlanta Falcon ever. Like, to me, Matt Ryan is right there. If you're talking Mount Rushmore, the Falcons, Matt Ryan's probably the first name that you have to name, especially when you talk about quarterbacks. And to me, Michael Vick and Matt Ryan, two different style quarterbacks, but Matt Ryan, surpassed pretty much everything that Michael Vick ever thought about doing in Atlanta. So, shouts out to Michael Vick, shouts out to Matt Ryan. And he says Mariota the pitch. Yeah, we're about to hit him with a nice combo. I think, like I said, I think Mariota's not a bad quarterback. I definitely think Kyle Pitts, he can make anybody look good. I could throw the ball to Kyle Pitts. He gonna go up there and get it. He's a unicorn. He's a freak of nature. So Kyle Pitts don't need a quarterback that's super accurate necessarily. Kyle Pitts just needs you to put the ball in his vicinity, and he's gonna make a play on it, which he showed us last year. So I definitely think that Mariota is underrated, and he's a guy that I talked about when Matt Schaub left. I wanted him to be Matt Ryan's backup because he knew Arthur Smith's scheme. So I did want Marcus Mariota brought in, but the Raiders had already signed him. So I definitely think that this is a great pickup for the Falcons with Marcus Mariota. And to me, Marcus Mariota does everything that all of these mobile quarterback fans want in Atlanta. Mariota's going to give you guys what you want because he's a guy who can run the ball. If you want a quarterback that's going to run, Marcus Mariota is the guy. Go look at any of his tape in college with the Titans. Anytime he plays, basically, he's a mobile quarterback. That's what he's going to give you. And shouts out to my brother in the chat, Six Man K Styles. Y'all go over and give him a subscribe and hit that like button on his channel as well. He's on his way to 1,000 subscribers as well. He says, I'm not worried about taking quarterback if the pieces ain't there. And I completely agree. I mean, I just feel like you need to build the team first. And this is something that Mike and K-Styles talked about last night. At this point, we need to build this team, build a team, build the offensive line, build the trenches, get the weapons, and then you just drop a quarterback into a good situation. To me, that's the best way to build a team. You don't necessarily need to start with the quarterback. Marcus Mariota is a good enough quarterback if he has the adequate weapons to get your team to the playoffs. Marcus Mariota led the Tennessee Titans prior to Derrick Henry being a dominant runner. If you go look at Marcus Mariota's his first couple years in the league when he was the starter in Tennessee, he got them to the playoffs a handful of times. I think like once or twice. So he's a guy that's still, I think, only 28 years old, still can run, still can spin the ball, throw the ball. And he's a guy that I think is going to shock a lot of people because he's been a backup. A lot of people think that he can't play the game anymore. But Marcus Mariota is better than a couple starters. Like, to me, I'll take a Marcus Mariota over a couple of starting quarterbacks in the league, like the Taylor Heineke's, even over like a Baker Mayfield. I think Marcus Mariota is kind of slept on. I just think his biggest issue is the injuries. If he can remain healthy, he would be good. And Millie Mill says Pickens, Watson, and I think he's talking about the Georgia wide receiver George Pickens, and then Watson out of North Dakota State, the two wide receivers. Yeah, those two guys are very good wide receiver prospects. Both George Pickens and Watson both has that size, and I think both of those guys will fit in Arthur Smith's scheme perfectly. And with that being said, I'm going to get ready to wrap up here. I may just take a few more questions, and then we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. But like I said, man, I appreciate each and every one of you guys. joining me. Like I said, I just want to get a couple things off my chest. Let's see here. He says, why does a top-notch quarterback on a team get the number 4 pick and number 8 pick the next year? We will be fine without Matt Ryan. Let's build these trenches. Can't do it with a $40 million quarterback. You can do it with a $40 million quarterback, but like I said, Matt Ryan and that $40 million, that was all because of TD, continuing to push back, and Matt Ryan continuing to restructure his contract so the Falcons were able to sign guys. The Grady Jarrett's, the Deion Jones. So we didn't lose those guys. Matt Ryan had to restructure his deal. That was the only reason why he had the $40 million cap hit. So it wasn't like Matt Ryan was making $40 million a year. That was his cap hit because we kept pushing back or kicking that can down the road, where now he had that huge of a cap hit. And that's why he had the largest cap hit in NFL history, because TD did a poor job of managing the cap, a poor job of giving out contracts to everybody. Robert Alford, Desmond Trufant. We went through the list of names. James Carpenter, Devontae Freeman. All of those contracts hurt the team in the long run. So Matt Ryan kind of had to restructure his deal so we didn't lose our playmakers after 2016. When they went to go and repay those guys or re-up the Grady Jarrett's, re-up Deion Jones, Matt Ryan had to restructure his deal a couple times, and that's really what put the Falcons, in the cap situation that we're in. So with that being said, I'm gonna get ready to wrap it up here. But I appreciate you guys. Like I said, definitely make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe button for your boy. I do see one other statement here. Says Lorenzo Carter feels like Devondre Campbell, but better. Yes, sir. Davis at 8. We nice now. We got some, what we say? Fig Dales in the trenches. Yeah, man. I mean, at the end of the day, I like Lorenzo Carter a lot. I hadn't actually made a video yet because we just signed him, I think, yesterday. But Lorenzo Carter was a good signing for the Falcons. This dude is about 6'5", 260 pounds or the 255 pounds. He's an outside linebacker / defensive end. He played at Georgia, but he's very young and very athletic. I think he's like 25, 26 years old. And I like the signing of Carter, Lorenzo Carter. I like him a lot. He played for the New York Giants, and in his first couple seasons, I think he had a total of like 14 and a half sacks over his first 4 years with the Giants. And his first couple years, he wasn't even a starter. But the last couple years, I think last year he had like 4.5 sacks. So he's a guy that's going to be one of those rotational guys that you can use on the defensive line to get pressure on the quarterback. But I like him because he's basically a younger version of a Dante Fowler. He's younger than Dante Fowler, but a little bit longer, has longer arms, is taller, and he has more upside. His ceiling is a little bit higher than the Dante Fowler as well. So we'll see what Lorenzo Carter can bring to the table. But I like the pickup. As you guys know, I believe in strength in numbers on the defensive line. So I still think we need to draft more guys in the trenches. We have to continue to draft in the trenches to get as many guys as possible in the trenches to help Grady Jarrett, to help Deion Jones up front in that front seven, and to help Michael Walker, who's now probably going to be the linebacker opposite of Deion Jones in that inside linebacker position. So I definitely think Lorenzo Carter was a good signing. Also, Isaiah Oliver also re-signed with the team, which is huge. Casey Hayward. We made a lot of great signings in this free agency, even though Matt Ryan and that whole situation was kind of distracting everybody, the Deshaun Watson debacle. I really think that Terry Fontenot and the front office has done a good job of bringing in gems. Like Casey Hayward probably was the best cornerback in free agency, and we were able to bring him in on a reasonable 2-year deal. So that Casey Hayward deal was huge, especially because you didn't trade AJ Terrell with that Deshaun Watson. So because you really have 2 lockdown corners. Like everybody's talking about Sauce Gardner. Now you have 2 lockdown corners because Casey Hayward is a lockdown guy. So AJ Terrell and Casey Hayward on both sides on the outside, it's going to be tough to throw the ball on the outside, and they're going to do a better job at playing that press man coverage and playing those zone coverages. So they'll give that defensive line a little bit more time to get to the passer because they're going to be able to play more tight man-to-man coverage. And in situations where Dean Pease does blitz, now you have reliable guys on both sides that can play man-to-man coverage, because we know that A.J. Terrell and Casey Hayward are guys that can play man-to-man coverage, lockdown, one-on-one coverage on an island. So we'll be able to see a lot more exotic blitzes and things of that nature. But with that being said, I'm going to get ready to wrap it up. I've been on here for an hour. If you guys missed the beginning of the show, definitely hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, go back and watch the show and share out this content. But I appreciate each and every one of you guys. And I'll have a lot more coming for you guys. Tomorrow, we will be doing What's the Word, Dirty Bird at 8. And tomorrow, we won't talk about Matt Ryan. We'll actually move forward and go ahead and talk about free agency and the pickups that we've made. And I also will go ahead and talk about where the Falcons are headed from my perspective, or where the Falcons is headed for this 2022 season. What should we expect? But with that being said, make sure you guys definitely hit the like button, hit the subscribe button on each and every one of our channels. Go over to Mad Mike Sports, hit that like and subscribe button. He's on the quest to 7,000. Hit that like and subscribe button here on my channel. I'm on the road to 2,000. And also go over to Six-Man K Styles, and he's on his road to 1,000 subscribers on his channel as well. But I'm just 1/3 of the heavy hitters. So those are my bros over there. We're definitely going to continue to give you guys content as well, getting ready for the new season. But with that being said, this has been your boy Jew. I'll holler at you guys in the next video. I'm out. Peace.